Okay, in reference to then this bond hearing, you've had an adequate time to talk to your attorney. Mr. Duran, you had time to talk to your attorney there briefly.
Yes, Your Honor.
And Mr. Rosales, you had enough time to at least briefly get an idea of, get some direction from your client as to what he wanted you to, how he wanted you to proceed.
I do have that, Your Honor, and I would like to call my client just for the purposes of the bond hearing and ask the court for a bond for my client.
All right, go ahead. Okay, Mr. Duran, if you'd raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Rosales.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Duran, how old are you, sir?
27.
And Mr. Duran, do you recall when you were placed on probation in this case?
I believe it was back in 2017.
And since 2017, while you've been on probation, you've been charged with a couple of other offenses. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you came to court and accepted responsibility for those two offenses, one being a DWI in 2017 and the other a possession charge in 2019. Is that right?
Yes.
And when you were charged with those offenses, did you flee or did you come to court and accept responsibility?
I did show up to court.
And more recently, since 2019, over the ensuing, I guess, 2 years, you have had a probation officer supervising your probation status. Is that correct?
Yes.
And have you had any issues in your ability to report?
Yes.
Can you tell the court why you've had problems with your report?
My problem is they keep changing me from probation officers and from offices, so I don't know where should I report.
Well, the probation department believes that you failed to report in March, April, May, and June of this year. Did you know who your probation officer was during those months?
Yeah, I was supposed to be Ms. Valverde because I was doing the TAP classes.
And what happened?
I missed my last counseling class, my last personal class, and they dropped me from the classes.
And why did you miss the last of your classes if you'd gone that far?
I wasn't able to get a day off for my work.
And how many of the sessions that you were supposed to go to did you go to?
I showed up to all of them. Mostly, I just missed the last one.
So when they say that you were unsuccessful in completing the program, it's because you didn't go to your exit interview, is that right?
Yes, sir.
But other than that, you did complete the TAP program?
Yes.
And did you report to your probation officer during those 4 months that I mentioned, March through June?
I was reporting to the probation officer of the office of the day. I don't know to which office I was supposed to be reporting though.
How were you doing it, by phone or in person?
Yeah, it was supposed to be by phone. And
So were you calling in?
Yes, sir.
And you didn't have anybody to transfer you to, or you didn't have a standard probation officer?
No, it was just the office of the day. I was just reporting just to the office of the day.
Okay, so did you fail to report March, April, May, and June?
No, Your Honor. No.
Okay. So what assurances can you give the court? Well, before I get to that, if you were to be released from incarceration today, where would you reside?
With my grandparents.
Is that where you normally live?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And what are their names?
It's just my grandpa. It's Jesus Miranda.
Okay, and do you have a bedroom there at his house?
Yes.
And if you were to be released today, would you have a place to work?
Yes. I'm currently an assistant manager at Tacos on Puco.
Okay. And so would you have enough money to pay a probation officer to continue reporting and paying your fees?
Yeah, I actually have the money to pay the probation fees. It's just that I can't get a case number. I couldn't get a hold of any of my probation officers. Ms. Maria Ortiz, she's in the downtown office. I'm supposed to be reporting it to the Northeast probation office.
So if the court were to help us straighten out who you're supposed to report to, would you be willing to report once a week?
Yes.
To assure the court that you're not, trying to avoid your responsibility for reporting?
Yes. I can report every week and provide a urine test every week of you.
Have you had any dirty UAs in the last 2 years?
No, sir.
Have you been clean?
Yes.
And is it really the case that you haven't done any community service hours?
Yes. I was concentrating on staying clean and working and being with my kids, and I lost track of time of doing my community service.
And if you were to start reporting to your probation officer, say you were released today and you could start next week, would you make arrangements with the PO to start doing your community service hours?
Yes, actually, I talked to my manager, and she's willing to give me the first week I get out of here, so I could do my community service.
Knock it all out fast.
Yes,
And would you be able to catch up on any fees or fines that you're behind on?
yes. Like I said, I already have the money for the probation fees. It's just that I couldn't get the case number.
I understand. Okay, and finally, do you have any intention of leaving El Paso and avoiding, the court proceedings that still lie ahead of you?
No, Your Honor. I still have about 2 years to go with my probation.
You're married
Yes,
and you have kids?
I got 4 kids.
And does your family rely on you for support?
Yes,
So your ties to the community are here in El Paso, is that correct?
yes. All my family's in here. All my kids are in El Paso.
Now, if the court were to set a bond in this case, would you be able to pay 10% of a $5,000 bond?
Yes,
And do you have collateral for the other 4,000 or the other 4,500?
yes.
A vehicle?
I have a vehicle. My brother would send for me.
Okay. So if the court were to set you a bond, would you also be willing to submit to the conditions of a PR bond so that he could have you report weekly and do weekly UAs?
Yes, yes,
Okay. Are you asking the court to set a bond for you today so that you can continue to face these charges and work more closely with me so we can defend you in this case?
yes.
Okay, well, I'll pass the witness.
All right. Any questions, Ms. Ritchie?
Yes, Your Honor, a few.
Go ahead.
Mr. Dudon, you just stated that you didn't know where to report, correct?
Yes,
But then you later stated that you knew you had to report to the Northeast to your probation officer there, correct?
yes. That was the office I was calling.
Okay. And even when you didn't get into contact with your probation officer via the phone, did you attempt to contact your officer or the main probation department any other times?
Yeah, I believe the supervising probation officer would be Ms. Valverde for the Northeast office.
And did you attempt to contact her?
Yes. Well, she was supposed to be my probation because I was still like in the tech classes. So I don't know at what time they changed me to my probation officer.
Okay, so did you attempt to speak with anyone else at any time in March, April, May, or June of this year?
No, I would just call to the officer today. I would ask him if he needed me to go through a UA, and he would tell me no, or they would tell me no.
Okay. And then did you previously live with your grandfather when you were out on bond last time?
Yes,
Okay, no further questions, Your Honor.
All right. And so you're requesting, Mr. Rosales, I set the bond at what, $5,000 cash or surety?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Ritchie, what's your position?
Judge, it's clear to me that Mr. Dudon is unable to reach his probation officer and continue to make efforts to do so when he is unable to reach that particular officer. He did admit he knew where to report. He does get notices of those transfers if the probation officer is removed and changed on a person's probation, Judge. He hasn't done well since 2017, and so we are respectfully opposed to any sort of bond.
Okay. Well, under the plea on deferred, I must set a bond. I can't deny bond. If it's straight probation, I could deny bond, but I cannot. I'm going to set the bond at $34,000, which is what I normally set it at on people that do not report. That'll be cash or surety. And, but I think you've already filed them. Have you already filed the motion to revoke? Is that right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And so next thing to do would be to see, Mr. Rosales, if you want a full hearing on these, on the revo, if we want a fully contested hearing, or if we don't, so that we could proceed, because obviously your client's in custody. Let's see. Find out if your client has had a vaccine or not, and if we could proceed in an in-court hearing. For that, I would be willing to have a hearing, or you can discuss whatever other options are available with Ms. Ritchie. Um, And, I'll proceed once you all give me some guidance as to where you all want to go.
Very good.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you very much. Good luck to you all.
Thank you.
All right. Let us proceed next with Mr. Hector Gonzalez. And that's with Mr. Williams. I believe this is another bond hearing.
It is, Your Honor.
Okay.
So, go back to my side.
Defendant's been in jail now, what, 13 days?
21, Judge.
Oh, 21 days? Oh,
Yes, sir.
I was reading off the wrong line. My mistake. 21 days. And what's his bond at?
He doesn't have a bond, Judge, and he's on deferred.
Oh, he's on probation, but what happened was, we issued a bench warrant because there was a new drug case that was filed against him, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
That's right. He pled guilty back on February 4th of this year to 5 years deferred. And there were some other misdemeanors and things involved in the plea. I believe he was 26 years old at the time, married with 3 children, fairly young, 5, 6, and 9, doing rock wall work at that time. This is as of the plea of February of 2021. It was July of this year, the 6th, that I received information of the new arrest, and that's why I issued the bench warrant. Do we have any information on that new case yet? We didn't on the 13th of July when we had a little review hearing. Do we have any new information about what that case is about, Ms. Ritchie?
I don't see any right now on portal, but I can do a little digging on, I believe it was EPPD. I can do some digging on their end and see if I can find the report.
Okay.
In my understanding, Judge, it was not his car. It was one of his cousins. It was found in the back seat. His wife is currently pregnant and they were going to the hospital, so they borrowed the cousin's car. His wife is due in December. Unfortunately, she was on parole, so just being in the car, her parole has already been revoked. His 3 children are currently with his mom, Judge. He was working. He still has a job. I think one of the differences between the last case and this case is my client was just put on probation in February. He hasn't had a face-to-face meeting with his probation officer. I'd like to give him another chance to, at probation, Your Honor. He is willing to get treatment, Judge. He's got an uncle that he's close to that I spoke to. The uncle talked to Trinity. Trinity has an outpatient program, and Mr. Gonzalez is willing to participate in that if the court thinks it's beneficial. As I said, Judge, he's only had about 5 months, or he only did have 5 months on probation. And we would ask the court to give him a $5,000 PR bond and make it a condition of his bond that he go through Trinity or some other outpatient, Judge.
Have you found anything about the case?
No, Judge, I've not been able to.
You said his wife was also in the car. It was the 2 of them. They borrowed a car.
They were on their way to the hospital, Judge, because she was having pregnancy issues.
All right. And she's not available to testify. You said that she's been jailed on this? She's
locked up, Judge.
Now, have they revoked her parole and sent her to prison, or she was in prison and got out?
No, she was, my understanding, Judge, and she actually called me yesterday, and I was real tentative in talking to her since she has, at least I would guess that she's got a lawyer on this new charge. But she was telling me it's her understanding her parole has been revoked or will be revoked. So because I don't understand if it was revoked or if it's just pending revocation, so she's not going to get out. But she was very concerned that there's nobody that will be able to take care of the baby if Mr. Gonzalez is still incarcerated.
Who's taking care of them now, you said?
She's due in December, Judge, but the 3 kids that he has now are with his mom, who's fairly overwhelmed with the 3 kids.
If he got out, though, he'd be working. Somebody would still have to be taking, because these are not, well, let's see.
They're 9. The 9-year-old is going to start school next week, Judge.
Yeah, it seems like the 6-year-old probably ought to be in school too.
Yes, sir. So
Maybe.
there will, and given the kind of work that he has, he usually will be out on time to get the kids from school, Judge.
Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this under advisement, because I'd like to see if you can get some documentation to show that, it's not their car, to the state. Plus, if the state can get a little more information about what this case is about. I mean, I want to see if it's really there. You all are saying it's in the back seat, and I don't know if there's any in their possession, because we just don't have any of the facts. But I'll take it under advisement until let's hopefully sometime midweek. Let's have another. We can have a hearing by Wednesday, either Tuesday or Wednesday.
Thank you, Judge.
And by then, hopefully, I'll have a little more information. Okay? Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Judge. Can I be excused?
You may.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Mr. Matthew Hernandez. Let's see where that. Yes, that's with, is that with Mr. Nunez? Yes,
Yes, Judge. How are you?
I'm fine. This is a case that, this is also a bond hearing.
Sorry, Judge, what was the case that we're on right now?
Okay, that one is going to be, I believe, Matthew Hernandez.
Thank you,
It's
Judge.
2020 0D04417. And I guess it's also 2020 0D05588. Let's see, Mr. Nunez, you're the attorney, or is it Mr. Rago?
We substituted Mr. Rago, Your Honor.
Okay. And so but you're representing him now
That is correct.
on both of these charges?
On all his cases, yes, sir.
And defendant's been in jail,
Since March 28th.
looks like 116 days or so.
Yes, sir.
And what's the bond?
One is set at 150,000 and the other one is set at 130,000.
Okay. Ms. Ritchie, let's see, let's look at the facts of the cases. I think we went over this, it's been a while, October the 6th of 2020, since we've been looking at this. I have a lot of notes. These are cases involving the Horizon Police Department. Some of these are allegedly, the first one occurs on May 2nd of 2020. Is it followed up by another case on June 20th of 2020?
Correct.
Yes,
And
sir.
these are cases with gunshots being fired, things like that. People have been injured. But
Correct, Your Honor.
would you want to give me some more, what details do you want to emphasize, Ms. Ritchie, and what details then do you want to emphasize, Mr. Nunez? So Ms.
Okay.
Ritchie first.
Yes, Judge. So on the 4417 case, I believe this was near a Peter Piper. So this is a place that children and their families do visit to enjoy and have a good time. This was a drug deal gone wrong. The defendant then pulled out a weapon and shot the victim that was trying to buy the drugs in the arm there. And then on the other cases, and then of course he fled the scene from that one, Judge. In the 5588 case, it looks like there was a physical altercation in which the defendant had a gun in his waistband. He laid in the bed of the truck and drove past another group of individuals. I guess one of his friends was driving the truck, and then he began shooting from the bed of the truck. And I do believe that there were some injuries there, Judge, and this occurred in the desert.
Right, I think that one I had some notes about most everybody were high school age in that case. And there was something that was one note that was disturbing was that one of the complainants in that case had suffered some kind of a head wound and another, an abdominal wound. Do you have any information about the status of, and I think that was the last thing I ever noted, was I wanted to know in June 10th of this year, I wanted to know the status of the people that had been injured, how they were doing. And I don't know if we ever got any information on that from either from the state, or I don't know if Mr. Nunez knows any of that either.
As far as the complaining witnesses, I don't have any additional information in regards to that. I do know that one was shot, I think it was the arm, the other one in the abdomen, and the head, Your Honor. These are just cases that we're gonna have to try, Your Honor. I've spoken several times with my client, and he's giving me a whole different story, Your Honor. So it's something that we're gonna have to go to trial. We don't plan to take a plea agreement whatsoever in these cases. My understanding is in the first case that Ms. Ritchie was mentioning, there was another individual in the vehicle. And it is my understanding that he is the one who shot the individual attempting to buy the drugs, not our client. In regards to the other case in the desert, I believe there's only, I went through the case a little bit already. We just got retained on it. But it's my understanding that there's only one individual saying that it was our client who shot the gun at the individuals that they were passing by. I've spoken to my client about it. There was another individual present with him, and it is my understanding it was the other individual who shot directly at those individuals. I read through the reports, and none of the complaining witnesses can identified our client as the shooter, Your Honor. And I think that's important for the court to know. Other than that, Your Honor, we are requesting a reduction simply, based on those facts and what our client has informed us of, but also the fact that since we're gonna have to try this case, our client, he's gonna be in there for some time. I can only assume that there are many other cases at the top of the list and defendants who have been waiting for their trial date for the past year and a half. And we're talking about an 18-year-old, individual who was trying to get his life back on track. And I think his biggest mistake is just simply associating himself with the wrong individuals. And I think that we can help him and get him back on the right track. He has a very strong support system. I've spoken to his parents, his mom, his stepdad. I've spoken to other individuals that know Mr. Hernandez pretty well. And they all describe him as a caring, loving, and helpful individual who just simply fell into the wrong crowd. And I think that if we reduce the bond down, I think a realistic number would be 30 to 40,000 each case. And we can do a split bond, and that way the court can feel comfortable with him being out. And that way the court can monitor him. We can put him on some intensive supervision where he can report maybe once or twice a week. But at least that way he can at least get out, finish high school, go back to work, help his family out, and get his life back in order. I mean, he's going to be sitting in there, I assume maybe a year or so if the bond isn't reduced. And I think he's entitled to a bond that he could potentially make. And 130 and 150,000 is just, it's not possible for him or his family, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Ritchie, did you want to respond to any of that?
Yes, Judge. I just find it odd that basically that these two ag assaults occurred in such a short period of time, that a gun was involved in both incidents and that several individuals got hurt each time as well. I don't think that reducing the bond that low would be sufficient for the type of injuries that were sustained in this case. I just think that that's too low, Judge. And I am worried that how violent these acts are, that it's just going to continue to progress if he was to get out.
Well, I still want to know how the complainants are doing. So I'll want another hearing, a status hearing on this case within 30 days. And certainly for my court coordinator, make sure we put these cases on the trial docket. But the allegations are extremely severe. The information at first notice of what could be some very severe injuries, shootings, that's a lot of potential violence there. I think there's a danger to the community. I think the bonds are appropriate. The request for a reduction of the bonds is respectfully denied, but we will have a status hearing in 30 days. So I want to know a little bit more, and then we will be preparing for trial.
Okay. And Ms. Ritchie, do you have an additional offer, or since we're just gonna have to try these cases, are you not gonna make an offer?
Let me speak with the victims, but it looks like it's just going to be a trial.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, thank you. And I'll go ahead and I'll send you an email in regards to some other questions that I have. Thank you.
Yes, sir, of course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see. I think the next case we were going to hear was regarding Mr. Jose Torres. Let's see. This is another bond hearing, I believe.
Afternoon, Your Honor.
Judge, Mr. Quinata is running late. He's in a suppression hearing in another court.
Okay. Then I think the next one I was going to do was Mr. Franco. I believe both sides were not requested. They did not want this. They were not interested in a live hearing here, correct?
That's correct, Your Honor, for candidness.
Yeah, this is just